All right, lock in because today I'm going to be giving my thoughts and recap on Australian Survivor, Brains versus Brawn 2, Week 7. So, yeah, just like that, it's time to get in here. Back at camp, it was all Karen fallout. Like most of this early section was all somewhat related to Karen, with Logan trying to take credit for the Karen move, which is going to be a big storyline in this episode. Then there was Kristen trying to patch things up with AJ and Kaylin, to which Kaylin said in confessionals that the berries were over. Then there was Zara feeling on the bottom because she just lost her final two, which Miles had to pick her up and give her sort of this pep talk about playing from the bottom, which inspired her to get the graduates back together. In this beginning section of the episode, I feel like Zara was the standout and Logan and Kristen tanked. Logan claiming credit to the jury in sort of a sneaky way is fine, but ultimately going back to camp and claiming credit isn't fine, especially since this is just playing into AJ's hands. Like she's creating a quote unquote resume that will get people to question taking her to the end. Also, Kristen played badly, but I already touched on this in the previous video before the fallout. There was just no reason to be all loyal and literally admit that she told Karen about the plan, because that just shows that she's untrustworthy, and in the end, she lost her buddy in Kaylin and she lost the berries because of it. The only gameplay that I liked here is Zara trying to get the graduates back together, which throughout this episode, she went around having these one-on-one chats with the graduates members. It's been commented on, like there hasn't really been a solid big alliance. The game is fluid, like they're in voting blocks. Like your enemy one round could be your best friend the next round. With no solid alliance, if you can lock down a majority alliance this close to the end game, then you're in a really good spot. So I like Zara's thinking, and I think it's her only real play because with the limited players left in the game, she's the closest to the graduates. I also think that going graduates is a good play because it takes AJ away from Kate and Morgan and you open up more space for you to survive. So I like this play from Zara. Next, they get to the reward challenge where they had to balance on a platform at sea for an overnight IKEA reward, which Kristen won. Her picks were funny because she picked Morgan and Logan, and I remember earlier in the season there was this sausage sizzle saga where Logan was dictating, didn't want the bronze to get the snags. Then in the next episode, there was like this comfort type of salon reward where Morgan didn't want Logan to go with them because she didn't let them get the snags in the previous episode. Now they're going on something similar, like it comes full circle. I thought that Kristen's picks were somewhat interesting because she picked Logan and Morgan when Morgan and Kate have been this tight pair. Like they've never really been split up in this game, but actually it makes sense because Morgan and Kate are just going to follow the same plan. So you don't need to bring both of them. Like that's redundant. Something that I also want to point out is how in every reward, the people going on the reward versus thing at camp seems to be somewhere near half and half, or less people go on the reward. The only time I think it wasn't that way was the first reward challenge, the opening challenge of the merge, when Kate got to pick the majority to go to the cocktail party. I'll fact check that when I rewatch the whole season again for rating every episode and player rankings and player story videos. But yeah, if I remember it correctly, she got to take 7 out of 13, and that was a big advantage to take the majority. So the game basically has to wait for them. Like there's no majority back at camp. Here, it was a 3 reward, 5 camp split, which even though the people going on the reward literally got a reward, I think that the people that stayed behind also got somewhat of a reward as well, or an advantage as far as the game goes, because hey, that's 5 right there. That's the majority. They can just come together as a 5, then there's nothing that the 3 people on the reward can really say about that to prevent it unless they have like good connections. But if not, then they're just sitting ducks. Although this didn't happen exactly, like no 5-person alliance, because of the limited picks and all of the graduates being left behind at camp with Kate, this gave Zara the perfect opportunity to go around to each and every graduate and pitch graduates reuniting, which eventually happened as everyone in this post-graduates alliance agreed that it was in their best interest to go forward together. It was a very advantageous camp reward split for the people left back at camp, But ultimately, Kristen didn't help herself by literally admitting that she was going to flip the Karen plan, which exposed that she was somewhat working against AJ and Kaylin. Then she didn't even take them. She didn't even go very strong with this reward. She went Logan and Morgan, which I said that taking Morgan is basically like taking Kate as well. And this let AJ see how Kristen was trying to form this Kristen, Logan, Morgan, and Kate group. So I don't think that Kristen was as screwed over here. I just think like her bad gameplay caught up with her. I thought her picks were all right, you know, like try and form an alliance at the reward. Solid idea, but it gave the graduates time to form again. So maybe in hindsight, like take AJ and Kaylin, something like that. I don't know. I usually like to recap and give my thoughts on these episodes chronologically, but the fact that they went to the postgraduates formation before the reward, and the reward seemed to be like a shorter section, that just screamed that whatever Kristen was trying to get to happen, like it just wasn't going to happen. They weren't the main characters of this episode. Also, it exposed that there's no winner in that group, but that's not breaking new ground. Like the Bronze were never winning this season. I had a question starting in week 2, but week 3 and week 4 solidified that they're not winning. When Noonan left and the 5 Bronze made the max move, but they got like no content, and the only real contender left was Paulie. They're just not winning this season, and I will be shocked if that happens. Anyways, for their plan, it was funny how Logan and Kristen were talking about getting out Kate when Morgan was right there. But also, if you never float the idea, like if you never make an attempt, then that's a failure, and they need Kate out at some point because it evens the playing field in terms of challenges. But ultimately, they settled on Zara because she flips and she's untrustworthy. I guess. Would have rather seen them target AJ, but they still thought that they were in the berries, so that's why that never happened. The only other thing to say before the immunity challenge is that it showed this flashback sequence of AJ putting ideas in people's heads about voting out Logan, which I don't have much to say about, like other than it's good gameplay. Also, Miles found an idol. Perfect. But he told AJ, not perfect. It's a bad idea to tell anyone about your idol, but he told AJ. I know they reconnected in this episode and talked about having to distance from each other and such, and they're still locked in, but at the end of the day, AJ is someone that was undermining Miles all last week, trying to keep him out of stuff. Also, last week, AJ told Miles when to play his idol, and it was a correct idol play. With all of AJ's connections, he can probably create a similar situation. Then, when they get to a final tribal council or something, AJ can say that Miles only played idols correctly because of him. This is just giving AJ way too much power, and I don't like it for Miles. Next, it's a 2-part immunity challenge where the first part is in teams and the second part is individual. Carry a person through an obstacle course, then the individual portion is throwing sandbags at a target. In this challenge, Kaylin dropped Kate, and because she had her hands and legs tied, she had no way to brace herself. Poor Kate. Also, no confessional after this, but I guess AJ threw the challenge at the rope part because he didn't want Logan to get a shot at immunity. Smart strategy, but poor Logan. But I read Logan's interview on 10 where AJ has kept on telling her that he didn't throw the challenge, so I really don't know what to believe. But anyways, this left the door open for Kaylin, Kate, Miles, and Kristen to advance, and when they got to the throwing part, Kate just had no chance. Laugh out loud. I think this challenge wasn't made for a small woman. Like, I remember pre-merge, whenever it was like throwing something, it would usually be Ben and Jesse. Like, yeah, I think this was made for a strong guy to win. This was such a Kaylin challenge, so I wasn't surprised when he won. Alright, so I listened to podcasters and YouTubers covering this show, so this isn't a completely original thought, but prior to even listening to any recaps, I thought that the challenges in this episode should have been flipped. The more individualistic reward should have been immunity, and then the team challenge should have been for reward. Now, based on my thoughts on the challenge being made for a physically strong man, was Logan really going to win the second part? I don't know. Like, I don't think she was going to be a lock to win, that's for sure. But I think with her group, it was possible because I don't know how good Zara would be, and AJ and Morgan are bad at challenges. Wouldn't bet on it, but it's possible. But I didn't like that Logan didn't get a real chance to compete for individual immunity because of team performance. Although very smart, I didn't like that the possible challenge throwing, which AJ told Logan that he didn't throw. Like, we'll see. Hopefully it comes out in exit press or deep dive, something like that. But even if he didn't throw, I didn't like that in the individual phase of the game, Logan had to rely on a team. And although this didn't happen here, I don't like helping in individual immunity challenges. Individual immunity challenges should be exactly that. Individual immunity challenges. And that's all I have to say about that. Anyways, back at camp, when it became obvious to Kristen that Kaylin and AJ weren't on their side, they first tried to pitch this Kate and Morgan vote split, get the graduates to split their votes to Kate, to Morgan, so the Brawn women and Logan could vote out Zara. For Zara, to Kate, to Morgan. But no one was buying any of that, and the postgraduates were willing to go to Rocks for the most part. I have to point out some bad gameplay from AJ here. He wanted to get Kate on side as a 5th vote. A constant theme throughout this week is this Kate and AJ relationship, and AJ possibly putting himself in game losing positions because he wants to tell Kate the plan, keep Kate and Morgan on side. In the same way that Kate telling AJ about the Miles plan was a misplay, AJ telling Kate about the Logan plan was a misplay, especially since they're going 4 strong. Like, if there's an idol in play, you flat out lose, or like you have to split your votes and bank on the other side splitting their votes, but like that wasn't happening since they were going 4 strong, so they lose. At the end of the day, there was no idol in play, so it doesn't blow up in his face like the Miles plan failed for Kate, but it is still bad gameplay because you're telling the other side the name that you're voting for in Logan, and you're giving them the power to plot against you when you already assume that they're a type 4. Maybe if he put more time into Kate in this round, told her the plan a bit earlier, tried to get her on the same wavelength as the graduates, then she could have actually flipped. But based on what was shown, that wasn't the case. It was just like one conversation. It's not even that calculated. Like, in the next episode, there's going to be a decision, and Miles said because he has the idol, the other side probably doesn't have an idol, which is smart. But it seems like none of that went into AJ's decision making, so it's a misplay. So anyways, they went to tribal council for a deadlock, and when the possibility of Rocks was on the table, they got 5 minutes to discuss what was going to happen before they went to Rocks. It's going to be revealed later why it was even easier for Miles and AJ to win this debate, like in a certain Jury Villa segment, but even without that context, they made solid points that were hard to disagree with, like Miles saying in a Rock scenario, it's 3 versus 2, so he and AJ have a lesser chance to go home. Also, although I still think that AJ telling Kate the plan was a misplay, it somewhat works in his favor here because he was able to talk to how fluid the game was and how they're in voting blocks and how this graduates 4, although the audience knows it's a locked in 4, they shouldn't believe that it's a locked in 4 because the game has been fluid and they can get rid of Logan here and not necessarily be in the minority tomorrow. Like, the game isn't playing out like that. Everyone's willing to work with each other, and AJ has shown that with his partnership with Kate and Morgan for this whole merge phase. Also, he joined the Berries with Kristen in the previous episode, so he laid down some nice groundwork for this pitch. These were some amazing points that were brought to the table. Meanwhile, Logan, apparently she didn't actually give up like how the show tries to make it seem. I'll put up this tweet by Miles and Logan, but at the end of the day, she only needed one person, but she couldn't get Kate, Morgan, or Kristen to go to Rocks for her, which ended her game here. Kind of funny how a lot of Logan's game was me. I'm never heard. My moves never get made. This Karen move is my move. Even when Polly was having a terrible time on Baron, probably the worst time out there, based on the edit, she made it all about herself and how she's been so wrong in the game, which could be true, but it was so funny how it was happening while Polly was having a moment. Then, although she said that she fought hard for Kate, Morgan, and Kristen to go to Rocks, in the edit, it didn't seem like she had that same fire that she showed with other stuff. And they made it seem like it was a situation where she was giving them the choice, like, hey, you don't have to lay down your game for me, but good luck if you think you can beat those four, like type of thing. Regardless of how it actually played out, I think the reason why she couldn't get Kate and Morgan to go to Rox is because of a reason that'll be explained later, but also this wasn't a real deal tested alliance. I bet their intentions were for it to be a real deal alliance, but they're just coming together on the fly, while the graduates, at least they voted together that one time, and there's just way more trust within that group than this Kristen, Logan, Morgan, and Kate group. Like, if this were Morgan on the chopping block, then Kate probably goes to Rox for her, but they're not going to Rox over Logan, someone that they ditched the Girls Gone Wild coven because of. I think not going to Rox was actually bad for all of them, Kate, Morgan, and Kristen, especially with the bird's eye view and hindsight, knowing that this Graduates 4 is going to stay strong going into the next episode. But I think it was even more of a mistake for Kristen because Kate and Morgan probably think that they have AJ, like they worked together for like a couple of rounds, while Kristen and AJ only really worked together closely in the Berries Alliance in the previous episode, and now that's over with. But yeah, that's all I have to say about Rox. Now I have to talk about Logan. I think she was a solid player actually, which I was debating, but just talking through her game, I like it. Very well insulated within the coven, very powerful at the start when AJ wanted to get rid of her for being this social butterfly, which showed to be true, as when AJ told Allie about the Logan plan all the way back in like episode 3, Allie went straight back to Logan to tell her what was going on. Like, Logan was just so well insulated. Then there was a point in the game when it looked like her game could fall apart after she was on the wrong end of the Mad Max tribal council, and at the swap she got split up from her best friend Laura and went to a tribe of Graduates and Rich, which both AJ and Rich have been wanting her out. I'll have to go back and see like just exactly how this played out, how much Logan herself was involved in ensuring her safety, which the rewatch should be starting next week. Like, I want to have watched all of the season again before the finale. But yeah, the most impressive part of Logan's game was surviving this swap when she really should have been gone with all of those graduates on Brawn 2.0. Survived the Rich round, the Ursula round, the Noonan round, and in the unexpected Ben round when he left the game, Logan would have survived the Polly round. He was getting voted out there, or AJ if the split plan failed, if the split was actually real. She survived all of this while she and Laura were being talked up as these best friends that when they get back together, they're gonna run the game. So that's amazing. She was even able to get into this Girls Gone Wild coven thing with Kate and Morgan. But her game takes a hit after the PD round where she was mad that she didn't get her way, and this made Kate and Morgan ditch her and Laura because Logan was causing too much drama or whatever. She even had to use her idol to survive, but she lost her best friend Laura, which is her fault. But she's able to like stay quiet, not create too many waves until after the Karen round, where she wanted to claim all of the credit, which led to her elimination. I think she's a decently competent player, but the only thing that holds her back are her emotions, how she just has these meltdowns when things don't go her way, which I hyper focused on. That is going to be a reason why she's not like the best player on this season, but I was thinking about having her like below Laura, maybe below Kristen, when now that I just talked through her entire game, she might have a shot at being a top 5 or a top 6 player, so that's nice. Also, I liked her as a character. She brought some good entertainment, like some good one-liners, always knew what to say. So yeah, I enjoyed Logan's run on this season for sure. One of my favorites. Now getting to episode 20. The story for the early portion, and really for this whole episode, was getting Zara to flip. The guys are locked in. Like, the next 3 eliminations are already set in stone. It's going to be Kristen out first because Kaylin can't trust her, and Kate and Morgan will follow her to the jury in the following rounds. And they're going on lockdown, so if the Brawny girls had an idol, they wouldn't know where to play it. While on the other hand, Morgan and Kristen were pitching to Zara about how they're a strong 3 with Kate and they can take out Kaylin, someone that's in everyone's final 3 and a challenge beast, so he's just never leaving the game and taking up someone's spot. So yeah, this episode had a big Zara focus where she was weighing these options in her head because she was the swing vote in the middle, and it was interesting because At least in confessionals, she had her doubts about the boys. Unfortunately for the Brawn women wanting to make a move, their plan got crushed as Kalen won his 5th immunity. A small moment that I liked that I wanted to point out was when AJ asked JLP for the record on immunity challenge wins. Zara passed it off to Miles, like, come on Miles, you know this, and let him have a moment to like nerd out. That moment kind of reminded me of Big Brother, where they only get Julie Chen Moonves for one night a week, so for the most part, the players host the comps and the game feels more player driven. Not saying I don't like JLP as a host, but I like that Zara gave Miles that moment to show off. So back at camp, somewhere down the line, the Brawn girls decided that it's going to be AJ that leaves, but they're in the minority, so they can't really make that happen. Then for the graduates, it's the same Kristen plan, lockdown plan, straightforward vote, but that just can't happen in Survivor. Here comes AJ trying to get everyone on board for this 3-3-1 plan, like get Kate and Morgan in, put 3 votes on Kristen, 3 on Morgan, then Kristen's vote goes to waste, and this way they'd be protected against an idol and get out Kristen or Morgan. He even got Kaylin to agree with this, while Miles and Zara wanted to keep it simple, and this was most of the conflict for this pre-tribal section. I didn't understand AJ's plan at first. Now I understand it, but he's relying so much on Kate and Morgan voting his way when, yeah, he said the game is fluid, but they voted against his alliance in the previous tribal council. In this plan, I suppose if Kate, Morgan, and Kristen just put all of their votes on someone like Miles, then like Zara, Miles, and Kaylin put their votes on Morgan, and AJ just sticks to the original Kristen plan, which in this universe, Kate and Morgan didn't vote with him, then it's a 3-3-1 tie where AJ is the one and can just be the deciding vote on the revote. His plan makes sense, I guess, but now that I just talked through it, it gives him so much power on the revote. He came up with the plan, and if it came down to a deciding vote, he's casting it, which he is graduate strong, but that has to scare someone like Miles. Like, his fate is in AJ's hands, and that could be another thing that AJ could use over Miles in a potential final tribal council. I don't think that Miles was thinking about all of that, but yeah, I understand AJ's 3-3-1 plan, but assuming he doesn't get the votes, he's getting the most power in this situation. This plan makes sense now that I talked through it, but when you're sleep deprived on an island, it probably wouldn't make that much sense. That's why I side more with Miles here. Like, just keep it simple. You don't need a bunch of votes flying around and like a revote and such. If the Brawny girls have an idol, the graduates lose the day if the Bronze play it right, but I like Miles justifying his decision to just go with the 4-strong plan because he already found an idol. Maybe they planted another one, but it's unlikely. Plus, Kate, Morgan, and Kristen are not known as these advantage finders. The only time they had an advantage was when Kristen got one at that one challenge in the pre-merge at the swap, but that was somewhat like out in the open, like not looking through a jungle. So these are both decent plans, but I like Miles's plan a bit more because it's simple, and the more people you involve, the higher chance the plan has to go wrong, and that could stir up paranoia, and he already has the idol. Like, just keep it simple. But AJ kept on trying to push for the plan to go through, and although he didn't outright tell Kate and Morgan that they're voting Kristen out, probably to have that plausible deniability if this backfires and they tell the graduates that AJ is scheming, although that didn't happen, he said that he doesn't trust Kristen, which he thought that was all they needed, but like they just didn't understand. Morgan even stormed off from this conversation when AJ wouldn't give her the name, which lowered my opinion of Morgan as a player, along with something else that happened later in this episode. But yeah, this stuff also lowers my opinion of AJ as a player as well, because this is 2 straight episodes where Kate is AJ's weakness, and if she or someone in her group had an idol available to them, then this could have blown up AJ's game. He's trying so hard to keep Kate and Morgan on board, to have options when he gets to the final 6, despite saying a few episodes ago that he wants to split them up before 5, which makes sense because with 5 left, someone can just latch onto their voting block and call it a day. Plus, they're probably taking each other to the end, so you really shouldn't let them get to 5 together. But yeah, keeping Kate and Morgan as potential options, like, that sounds good in case something goes wrong, and it would give AJ the most power, like the most options in the final 6. But sometimes, like, you just gotta make your bed and lay in it, man. Just because the Brawn girls and Logan in the previous episode didn't have an idol and AJ was able to win the day, that doesn't mean that I think he played those rounds perfectly. I think this is bad gameplay that's giving the other side a chance to plan against him. It's also bad gameplay to be the most chaotic player in the game and continue to push this crazy vote split plan when Zara already said no, and they need to keep her on side. And this chaos actually made Zara consider flipping if the confessionals are to be believed. These back-to-back episodes really lowered my opinion of AJ's game, always wanting to have his cake and eat it too, which sounds nice to have all of these options, but it's annoying his alliance members that he actually wants to go deep with. So at that point, unless it's for jury management, like just make your bed and lay in it. Anyways, they go to this tribal council where the Brawn women were on the bottom, pitching for a flip. I think they were mainly targeting their talk at Zara, but the postgraduates decided that the deck was stacked in their favor, so there's no need to make a big move, like just because. A flip would be a big move and provide shock value, but there would be very little substance to back it up for any of these postgraduates. Miles was the star of this tribal council. He had a perfect counter for everything that Kate and Morgan had to say, looking like Batman in that one fight against Deathstroke in Batman Arkham Origins, like when he was just blocking all of his sword strikes. I think Kate was making all right points, believable points, especially if someone was on the cusp of flipping. Her best point was when she mentioned the big move aspect, probably one of the last chances to make a big move for your resume. But when she was talking about like, what if they're on the bottom of that alliance, and if they flip to them, they'd be leading the alliance. It is what she has to say, but Miles had some good counterpoints about how even if they're at the bottom of one 4, if they flip, then they're going to the bottom of another 4, because Kate, Morgan, and Kristen pitched themselves as a type 3, so it's a sideways move, and once they give them a name for this vote, they'll go along with it to get the power, but then at the next vote, they're at the bottom of a 4-person alliance with 3 strong Brawns, and they're just waiting to get picked off. Kate had an alright point, said what needed to be said, but Morgan put up a bad argument. She asked why should she give Miles a name when he hasn't given her a name, but the thing is, they're not in equal positions in this game at this point. Miles is at the top, Morgan's on the bottom. Miles doesn't need to give her a name because he already has a name and doesn't need Morgan to advance further into the game. Morgan's in the minority. She needs Miles more than Miles needs her, so she needs to pitch a name to him, because if she doesn't pitch a name, it doesn't affect Miles one bit. He's just going to pick them off in a row unless they can bring him a plan that he likes. Also, makes no sense for Miles to pitch Morgan a fake name and potentially blow up his game if that name gets out and causes paranoia. Like, no, he already has a name, his alliance agrees with it, he has all of the votes he needs, that's that. Morgan didn't pitch Miles a name because apparently he's a ghost and he was never going to work with them, but that's giving up right there. She probably could have made something happen if she pitched a name to Miles, but it just seems like Morgan is unwilling to play from the bottom for like the first time in this game. Kate and Morgan have played just about all of this game at the top. They voted for Candy at the first tribal council, which won the day, but it was a plurality vote. The majority of the tribe voted for Nash and Ursula, but they didn't have to take repercussions for this. Like, they didn't have to play from the bottom. They were able to join the 6 with Noonan, Polly, Ben, and Jesse, and ever since then, they're always in the majority and always get what they want for the most part. They got a fortunate swap, which they took advantage of in the max vote. They might not have got exactly what they wanted at the 1-player swap tribal council, where at first, like before they knew it was a swap, it was the Girls Gone Wild Alliance trying to vote out Jesse. Then they didn't get to send Laura over to Brawn, which the Brawn guys forced Zara over there. But whatever, they didn't go back to tribal council and made the Jesse move at the merge. Even when they seemed to be left out of the vote at the PD vote when Polly got saved, according to some of Polly's exit press, they were actually somewhat in on Polly getting saved and being brought into a 6 with themselves, Polly, and the big 3, Miles, Kaylin, and AJ, which I don't know all of the details right now. Like, definitely want to hear more about that. Then, for the rest of the way, they latched onto AJ, and even though Miles negated their votes with his idol, like, they still voted with half of the tribe. They played the majority of this game in the majority, which is good for them from a player rankings point of view, but now they're on the bottom. they, and more specifically Morgan, seem to not really know how to play from the bottom that effectively, which lowers my opinion of Morgan's game a lot and could potentially create some separation between her and Kate on the player rankings. Like, I doubt they're going to be right next to each other despite playing their games together. Also, another thing about this debate and being on the bottom, not that I hate Morgan, I've actually probably been the biggest like Kate and Morgan fan this season, but it was funny to see Miles in a position of power, shutting down all of Morgan's points when earlier in this season, she was part of the challenge throwing when Miles was so helpless and on the bottom, and according to Exit Press, the OG Bronze just weren't strategizing with the brains. So it is funny to see how this stuff comes back around within the context of Survivor. No hate at all, but it is crazy how the game flipped like that, and it just shows that even when you're on the bottom, like even when you're in a bad spot, you just have to survive, like make it to the next day. Like, you never know what can happen in Survivor. But yeah, anyways, there was a little bit of intrigue when Kate, Morgan, and Kristen made their last stand and tried to get Zara to vote for Miles, but that was never happening, and Kristen was voted out. Funny how this episode started off with Miles pole dancing and they blurred out his privates and he was talking about how the girls like didn't have the cojones to go to Rocks or whatever, but right here he showed that he had the cojones to trust in his alliance and not play his idol despite being one vote away from going home and seeing Zara and the women talking. The jungle rat survives. Now for the big debate, was this the right move for Zara? Well, from an edit perspective, she's at the bottom no matter what, but just analyzing what she had there on the island, it's still tough, and there's always the chance that she didn't actually think she was on the bottom of the guys group. Kaylin's a challenge beast, but also, despite not winning one this week, Kate's good at challenges. She was Zara's main competition at a point, so no matter what, Zara isn't the best challenge performer wherever she goes. Morgan and Kate are a tight pair that will probably take each other to the end, even though they probably shouldn't because they played similar games and it would be hard to differentiate themselves. But even though Zara might not technically know all of this stuff, Morgan and Kate haven't voted for each other in this game yet. Morgan and Kate have never been on opposite sides of the vote. They're always voting together. Kate picked Morgan to go on the first reward and to the bounty tribe, and they literally celebrated out in the open when they got to be on the same tribe at the swap. They've done everything together, so you just have to assume they're taking each other to the end. Kristen is also an OG Brawn, so that has to be in Zara's head, and even though they haven't really been working together like that, they were working together for the past 2 rounds, this one and the Logan round, so I guess Zara would have to assume that she's at the bottom of that. Zara has no friends in that group, while on the other hand, the edit highlights it, but from certain exit interviews, people didn't realize that AJ and Miles were that tight, so maybe Zara saw more room to get in between that. In terms of win equity, the edit makes it somewhat clear that she's probably not beating Miles and AJ and possibly Kaylin, even with the Coven jury, but is she really beating Kate, Morgan, and Kristen? That's where she might have had a better chance, but I don't think it's a slam dunk. Kate played a good game, Morgan played a worse version of Kate's game. Kristen, I thought she was likable and like everyone wanted to work with her, but after watching a Jury Villa video, I don't know how to feel about her. Don't know how to feel about Kate and Morgan's jury chances either because of the reactions to what got revealed in Kristen's Jury Villa, and no one really leaves the game talking about how amazing Kate and Morgan are playing. But yeah, truly, I don't have an answer for which move was better because I see it as an inconsequential sideways move. Whichever move had the most positives, it didn't really matter that much because the odds weren't stacked in Zara's favor. The way I see it, Zara is drawing dead at this point, probably wouldn't win whichever way she went. I think it was the most logical decision for her to go with the graduates that were literally just about to go to Rocks for her, while in the Karin round, Kristen wanted Zara out and Kate and Morgan voted for her, and literally in the previous round they all voted for her. Also, in Kate's pitch, she said that if one of them gives them a name, they'd be at the top of their alliance, but when Kate pitched to Zara, she just chose Miles instead of letting Zara pitch, which even though Zara agreed to her face, that contradicts Kate's point and just shows where the power is on that side. Not with Zara. She has a longer history with the graduates. She has a more recent history with the graduates. I can see why she went with the postgraduates. At the end of the day, it's not a big deal because she's probably not winning either way, but she could have decided the winning side. And I'm thinking of a whole nother reality where she picks the other side, and that results in Kate, Morgan, and Kristen getting big edits throughout this season instead of AJ and Miles, and Kate and Morgan would be propped up as this dominant partnership that ran the game, which was close to happening if they won one out of these previous 2 rounds and they got the numbers. That would be fun, especially since Kate and Morgan are my favorites. But that didn't happen. Zara built a better connection with the guys. The Brawn girls got outplayed. They're probably out next. Could be back to back. It is what it is. The possibility that they'll be out next is why I won't go on about how I think all of the graduates misplayed by not trying to get Kate out to limit AJ's options. It is a misplay to leave his voting block in the game because he could possibly have 3 votes in a 6-player game right now. But AJ said he wasn't taking Kate and Morgan to 5 and kept them in the game to be shield, so whatever. I've already gone through enough. I won't get into that. Now I have to talk about Kristen. I thought that she could be a GOAT, but she was actually a sneaky good player. Now, it wasn't a good idea to be so attached to Nash and friends early on, but at the swap, despite not being in power, she was able to keep a low threat level despite having a public idol, which is insane. Unfortunately, she had to lose PD because Miles stole her idol with his advantage, but she recovers nicely, never seems to be a legit target, willing to work with everyone, solid social player. The only thing missing from her resume was a big move where she took control of the game and shifted it in her favor, which could have happened at the Karin vote, but she had to mess it up and tell Karin, which got Karin to blow up her game like it's both of their faults. If Kristen said nothing, then Karin's still there and she just blindsided AJ and like she can possibly take over the game. But that didn't happen, and from that point on, Kristen's game goes downhill. The Berries got crushed because she admitted to Kaylin and AJ that she was going to flip the plan. She chose the wrong people for the reward, didn't even try to remain Berry strong, and didn't go to Rocks when she probably should have been the main one demanding Rocks because unlike Kate and Morgan, she didn't have an AJ protecting her. Because she didn't go to Rocks, her side lost the numbers. Easy elimination in the next round. Even if they went to a rock draw and lost, I think that was a chance worth taking. I'll have trouble ranking Kristen on the player rankings. It's a steady game, but she wasn't able to make that big Karin move that would have cemented her as, let's say, like a top 7 player of this season. And she played a horrendous final 3 rounds where the first 2 rounds were horrendous, and that put her in a position to be a sitting duck in the 3rd round, her elimination round. Mixed feelings on her as a player, but she brought a lot of positive energy to the game and at Jury Villa, so I like that. Speaking of Jury Villa, it's time to get into that. 2 big things happened. Paulie didn't even let Kristen get time to breathe. Like, he went straight after her, calling her a snake and such, and blaming her for ruining his game. Remember Miles versus Kate and Morgan looking like Batman Arkham? That was Kristen here as well. I love how she didn't fold and had counters for everything Paulie was saying, even going back to OG Brawn. Basically, a TLDR, just to get through it fast, is that Paulie was never trying to work with Kristen, always trying to dictate, especially on original Brawn when he was in power. Tried to get Kristen to burn her idol when he had an idol of his own on Brawn 2.0, and on Baron, they said they'd look out for each other, tell each other if they heard their names, and Paulie didn't tell Kristen that he was in on Miles's plan to vote her out. Like, yeah, it's a good watch, and I'm glad that Kristen held her ground and shut Paulie down on every single point. I just feel like it was the wrong time to have that conversation. Like, let Kristen relax a bit. She was so happy to be at Jury Villa, then that all got crushed by Paulie, and she ended up leaving dinner early. Good thing Logan shut it down at a point, but the faces that she was making while all of this was going on were so funny. Then, the other thing that happened is that Kristen revealed that she, Morgan, and Kate didn't know how rocks worked. Kristen thought that it was going to be a fire-making challenge between Logan and Zara. So that's another reason why they didn't go to rocks for Logan, because they didn't know what the concept of going to rocks meant until JLP explained it to them. I just want to mention that, like, although it's not the exact same thing, they used the rock draw to decide some of Bounty versus Baron. Kate and Morgan didn't participate, and it wasn't as convoluted as, like, the two people you voted for are safe and everyone draws rocks, odd rock goes home. But at least, like, the concept of drawing rocks, like random chance, was there. Like, they saw it. Also, to make matters worse, the one person in that group that knew what rocks were, Logan, she didn't tell Morgan and Kate about rocks earlier because she fought so hard to get them on her side, and if she told them they'd have to risk their game for her, then she thought like they wouldn't go for it. So some blame has to be placed on Logan as well, because if she told them before, they're either flipping to another plan so you lose anyways, or at least they have some time to come to terms with going to rocks. Learning about rocks at tribal council is the worst possible time, so yeah, misplay. Also unfortunate that they didn't know how rocks worked. It should have been explained like before they started the game, or maybe it was explained, I don't know. Or their mindset was that it was such a rare scenario that never happened in AU, so it probably wouldn't come into play. But yeah, that's why the rock draw didn't happen. I think the player rankings are sort of solidified for this season, but overall, that makes me think a little bit less of Kate, Morgan, and Kristen as players, like overall in the grand scheme of things. Not knowing about rocks affected their strategy, and if they knew about rocks, they probably could have won that vote. I see it as a big deal, but it's not enough to just like tank them in the player rankings. Like, they're still going to be wherever they were originally going to be, but man, that is unfortunate, I've got to say. For my standout players of the week, it's tough because there's a very clear big three, you know, like the Trevor, Michael, and Franklin of this season, Miles, AJ, and Kaylin, but I don't think one of them played a clearly better game than the other this week. Miles got his plan to go through at the Kristen vote, but should he and Kaylin really have been voting out Kristen here over Kate and Morgan? That's just leaving AJ with so many options. Also, I didn't like that Miles told AJ about the idol. Kaylin swept the immunity challenges this week, but like I said, should he really want to vote out Kristen here over Kate and Morgan, especially since she was his buddy at a point? And for AJ, despite not getting his perfect way at the Kristen vote, I think the week played out better for him. He still has Kate and Morgan potentially, and he's in the middle at the final 6 and can choose his pathway if he wants. Like, he can stay graduate strong, or with Kate and Morgan, that's 3. That's enough for rocks. And if he can bring a Kaylin over, they would win the day. So AJ has options, but in back-to-back rounds, he gave Kate a chance to completely blow up his game, literally told her the votes were on Logan, and he tried to tell her the votes were on Kristen without actually saying the votes were on Kristen. Like, he said he doesn't trust Kristen, but Kate didn't pick up on that. All Kate needed was an immunity idol, and she could have flipped the game because AJ is misplaying, trying so hard to keep Kate and Morgan on side when he's not even going with both of them to the final 5 according to him, so one of them is about to get cut anyways. Also, AJ's convoluted plan could have potentially got Zara to flip, so that's not a good look. I think all 3 of them played good but flawed games this week. Zara probably played not the best but the least flawed game this week, where she got the graduates back together, so that's nice. Like, they were willing to go to rocks for her. Big swing position at the Kristen vote where she got to choose how the game played out, and although Miles and Kaylin want her out at 4, it seems like she's at least going to make it there, whereas if she went with the girls, that's less stable. Like, there's a higher chance to get cut before final 4. Really, the postgraduates won this week, so they're all the standouts. As for how I see the game playing out, I think Kate next because she's just a better player than Morgan and more likely to win challenges. Also, she has that connection with AJ that Zara, Kaylin, and Miles should look to break up. I think the only way Kate makes it past 6 is with an immunity win, because why go for Morgan over Kate? That's likely, unless AJ can make something happen. But also, might just have to get Morgan out because she seemed to be unwilling to work with people. Not the biggest or most imaginative strategist, which is backed up by Logan's exit press. Like, she just wants to stick to one plan. Don't want to misquote Logan, but it was something along those lines. Meanwhile, Kate is more willing to strategize and like mix it up. Just seems to be a more active player than Morgan. That's enticing if one of those graduates were looking to make a big move, because I don't know if AJ, Kaylin, and Miles should go to 3 together. Like, they are their toughest competition. I was thinking if Kate goes at 6, then maybe Morgan could potentially have some longevity, be used to like make a move, maybe get taken to the end. But like I said, she doesn't really seem to be willing to strategize with anyone. And if Morgan went at 6, I'm thinking that's because Kate won immunity. So that would mean that Kate just follows her out the next round if she doesn't win immunity at the final 5 because she's a challenge beast. I think one of them leaves next week, but it really could be both of them because there's a graduates alliance. Kate and Morgan are the most under-edited players left. They don't have a losing finalist storyline, so it's probably going to be them next. We'll see. But yeah, that is all I have to say for another good week of Australian Survivor. Stay strong, stay brutal, because above all else, it's anything to win.
I won't let you down, Bruce. I'll keep fighting. Always.